And welcome to RISE, Educators Rise for Racial Equity, our Library of Congress Teaching with Primary Sources program. And this is session number 7, which we had intended to be kind of a closing session entitled From Equity Dream to Reality. Our hope is, however, if there is need and interest and support, we would do some of these sessions additionally in the summer. We will talk about that in a minute, but I want to always at the beginning pause and most sincerely thank Sheila Smith and the Barra Education Foundation for their partnership with DePaul University, which has been truly one of the most vibrant and meaningful partnerships. And it's through that partnership and the Barra Education Foundation's grant through the Library of Congress that DePaul is able to do this work with you today. And so thank you so much, Sheila and team. And as we begin this session today, we wanted to just take a moment to pause and to recognize a very monumentous moment in our history as we recognize Juneteenth. So if we could all just take a moment and center yourselves, take a really deep breath in as we kind of also are approaching the end of the school year for many of you. And just take a nice deep breath in. Release that breath slowly as we remember those who have truly formed our nation in recognizing what happened on Juneteenth, June 19th, as we, those who carry on, continue to dream and lead and fight and write and speak and dare and think and reclaim, and most importantly, educate and challenge and inspire and win. And so I'm going to ask my friend and colleague, Dr. Bates, just to give us a little bit of background on Juneteenth from a historical perspective, just to kind of set that stage for us. Dave?
Thank you, Donna, and thank you all for being here tonight. So Juneteenth, the very, very quick explanation of Juneteenth is that it's a celebration of emancipation. But as with everything else in history, it's actually significantly more complicated than that. So as I'm sure most of you probably know, the Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect on January 1st, 1863. But as you probably also know, the actual enforcement of that is very uneven, and it sort of follows the progress of the Union Army. And one of the things that's sort of a weird anomaly of the Civil War is that the majority of the fighting is taking place either sort of on the coast, thinking about Georgia, in Virginia, or on the Mississippi. And so Texas becomes this weird kind of backcountry frontier almost in the war. And one of the things that's interesting is that Texas's enslaved population actually grows during the Civil War, which is the only state that's true for, because white Southerners, enslavers, are bringing themselves and the people they've enslaved to Texas to, keep hold of what they view as their property and protect it from Union encroachment. And so even though the Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect January 1st, 1863, even though the war ends in April 1865, enslaved people in Texas are not actually freed until June of 1865, because that's when the Union Army finally takes possession of the state and occupies it for a transition of power. And so I think that it's worth remembering. I just think it's such a kind of a poignant moment and an appropriate one to celebrate Juneteenth as a celebration of progress and a celebration of triumph, but also maybe a moment to reflect on the kind of barriers that white supremacy has consistently erected to those kinds of progresses and those kinds of triumphs, and what we can do to kind of keep breaking down those barriers in the future.
Thanks so much, Dave. And I think as we approach the school year next year, those of us who are in K-12 can really take a moment and integrate that into our teaching and learning as well. But we too wanted to make sure to recognize the significance of that decision. So this is in the series of what we've done this year, our final session in that way. Our hope is that this summer, again, as I mentioned, that we could continue our discussions. But what we hope to do today is really have this be an open dialogue with you. We want to talk about the past 6 sessions and what they've meant to you, and kind of use it as both an analysis and evaluation of the work that we've been putting together. We want to talk about the impact of RISE on us, those of us who've led it, because we've seen some pretty significant transformations, and we want to share that journey with you, because that too has been part of the learning. And then we want to hear from you about what is needed moving forward. This work is daunting work, as some of you may know. But it's significant and meaningful work. And we know that everyone's in a different place with that, depending upon your school and your population. And we want to, as much as we can, look at the future and see how we can move forward to answer those needs. So with that, I'm going to introduce Tina, Dr. Curry, who will just set the stage for us with our norms together today.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so happy to be in community with you. So we bring to this space, to this work tonight, these 7 norms, and we hope that they will help us to foster a strong engagement and a shared approach to this work. And we invite you to just think about maybe just 1 or 2 norms you really need to be intentional about tonight to help you get to the most out of our time together.
Thanks so much, Dr. Curry. And what we're going to do as we go through this session is really invite you at any time. Feel free to unmute yourself and to add in comments and recommendations or any kind of feelings that you have. We're going to begin. Felicia is going to actually talk to one of our participants who also is in the doctoral program at DePaul. So Felicia, do you want to ask Caitlin?
I do. Caitlin, I'm so excited that I had the opportunity to work with you this year. And my question to you is, what do you remember most having been part of this project with us? When you think about the reflection, inquiry, and all of that, what stands out most for you?
So that's a really great question. I think I have a very unique perspective in that I am a member of the DePaul community, as well as a student and a participant in RISE. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me in terms of the community was the comment section of our participants, because they all come from such different backgrounds. We had teachers from all different walks of life and all different age groups and all different philosophies, but it was really amazing to see everyone's growth throughout these times, and kind of experiencing that growth within a very real time world, even though we might be miles apart. One image that stood out to me as far as the primary sources was this image that you see here. The stoicness of this beautiful young woman who is unafraid. Maybe she's afraid internally, but outwardly she is gorgeous, she is strong, she is poised. And that leads me to believe that if we continue to work hard, we can achieve what this young woman was likely thinking. And that is an equitable world, both in education and in every other sector abroad, and influence that if we continue this kind of community building that we have started through RISE.
Okay, great. Thank you, Caitlin.
You know, and I love the comments in the chat. Dr. Cinnamon had said how important it is to be brave is what she remembers most. And Molly, if there's anything you want to add on that, feel free.
I can tell you that I feel incredibly blessed to have had connections with this panel, and I'm always learning. I am by far no expert, but I have felt the frustrations of trying to do this work with fidelity and honesty and heart. And every time I reach out to Dr. Donna or Dr. Tina or Felicia or Stephanie and say, I'm stuck, or this hurts, or I'm not sure what to do, or I'm afraid, the response is always very appropriate, which is, imagine how people of color have felt for years. Every time I get afraid, that's a really good reminder that this is work that other people have been doing for, or trying or fighting or risking for a very long time. And so it makes me, when I hear that, imagine how people of color have felt all of this time. It inspires me to do more, to be more vulnerable, to be more honest, to own my own biases, to encourage people that I love and serve to own their own biases, and to get smarter and more aware, self-aware, and also aware of others around me. Our kids are counting on it. And I'm just so blessed and fortunate to know this team from DePaul and to be in community with all of you. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thanks so much, Molly. And Craig, thank you for your comment as well about the importance of empathy and understanding the context. I think, when we think about what I remember most about this session is I had thought going into this myself that I had mastered empathy, that I'm pretty empathic. But I think it was called to a new level when we as a team were preparing for a RISE session. And there's an image that you'll see, one of the primary sources actually, that maybe you won't see in this session, is an image of a lynching. And to witness the pain in my both friend and colleague, Dr. Curry, shifted me. I could still cry about it now, because it was being in that moment of doing something, professional development is what I do. You think you have a skill set, but then deep levels of empathy when you see someone else's pain is what I will always remember about RISE, and opening that door for me. And really, I think it was the image. And Tina, I'm sure you remember that image, but where I was, and you don't know this until you're in it. I was stunned that Tina couldn't even speak. It was that real vivid type of pain. And that's what racism is. It is that pain that stops you in its tracks. And Dave, okay, Dave, do you want to speak to what you've said? Because I think that's great.
I just wanted to sort of honor Tina, because it was such a powerful moment for me when we started this process. We were going through norms, and we all kind of, I think reflexively said, well, clearly we're going to create a safe space for these discussions. And Tina very gently sort of redirected us to saying, I think actually what's more valuable is a brave space. And I just found it to be such a transformational moment in how we have these discussions, right? That yes, it should be, safe in the sense that people should feel safe, sharing, and they shouldn't feel that this is a place that's going to be traumatic. But really the goal of this work is bravery, right? It's to push forward and inspire our students and learn ways to push this work ahead. And so I just wanted to kind of give her credit for that. It was such a powerful moment for me. Just flipping that one word was transformational in how I was thinking about this work.
Thanks so much.
If I can add, Dr. Kill, Tina, you have blown it out of the water, as in every single time. And as a Black woman, I don't think there has been one single time that I've gotten on here and not taken away so much every single time, even when we just go over what.
Oh, your sound went out, Felicia. So, well, I don't think that Felicia knows that we can't hear her. So there you go. Wait, are you back? You're back.
Yeah, but I just want to say, Tina, thank you so much, because you have helped me as a Black woman, right? There are times where I think so many African Americans, we're walking almost in a numbed state, right? And then to have you as an educator, the way you speak about your students, and how, I don't know, countless times I've told you, boy, what I would give just to go back and be one of your students, because you show up with passion and with, you see their dreams and you want to help them bring that to reality, where, looking back in time, there weren't teachers that pushed us, or that saw that gift in us. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for just speaking your truth and helping me to see.
And speaking of Felicia and Tina, I think, Felicia, you were going to ask Tina about our next question.
Yes, I love me some Tina. I'm sorry, I know this is recorded, but Tina, I want to ask you, what do you think of when you hear from equity dream to reality?
Um, so when I first saw this, the first thing that came to my mind, when I see dream, I think of someone's vision, or an idea that someone has, that becomes a reality when it's put into action. And just from experience, I know that moving from equity being a dream to being reality does require courage, and it requires persistence. But we've seen that time and time again throughout history, where dreams have been realized. But to get to the action, you have to have an indomitable spirit. And I believe that spirit lives in anyone who is a dreamer for justice and equity. And the particular vision that's here, this is the one that shifted me in this work. And I invite everyone who's listening to the sound of my voice to please join in and engage with me, as your heart opens up to do so. But when I saw this image of a slave reaching out to help his oppressor, in that moment I realized I had as much to learn about empathy as I had to teach others. And I had to, in that moment, recognize and own my own hatred, my own bigotry and racist ideas I had been carrying with me for years, that just made me so ignorant and made me so ineffective. And this primary source document just changed my life. So to Sheila, thank you so much for having a vision for this work, that we can share this with other people. Very, very powerful time for me.
Thanks so much, Tina. And thank you, Stephanie. And so sorry we missed that link. I want to take a moment, not to focus on myself at all, but to throw some accolades to the team by just sharing Dr. Molly's comment, because it's true for me too, that even on my most vulnerable day, the DePaul team reminds me of the necessity of this work. Even on times where I think I'm not sure what to do, it's, Felicia and Tina and Dave and Susan and Stephanie who remind me that even when we don't know what to do, we have to do something. And just to highlight often, and I did this in our last, as we were going through preparing for this workshop, to remind myself of my own white privilege as we were going through this, preparing for this workshop. I was asking the questions and I said, whoa, that's my voice. And I had to check myself and back up and say, remind myself of the incredible educators that I'm very honored to work with. So thank you for that comment, Molly. I want to give it right back to the team. And then I want to switch it over to Stephanie Bennett, who is one of our brilliant doctoral students, also professor at St. Xavier and helps us at DePaul, who's going to ask Dave, I think, the next question.
Thanks, Dr. Keel. So the next question is, are there primary sources we use in RISE that truly challenged you and or your beliefs and understandings?
I feel like I've learned so much from these sessions, just to sort of echo what everyone has said, like, my fellow facilitators, from the participants, like the chat in each of these has been like eye-opening every time. It's been amazing. So I'm hugely grateful for everyone attending, for the other facilitators, especially, as a white person trying to remain humble and do this work with a sense of humility, combined with a sense of purpose, and sort of trying to grow myself and sort of do what I can to push things forward in whatever way I can. In terms of primary sources, I think one thing that I've really reflected on from these sessions is I always felt kind of like I guess like the opposite of what I was saying, like a lack of humility about primary sources. I sort of felt like this is it, right? Like you can crack the code of teaching history if you use primary sources, throw out the textbook, stuff like that. But I feel like this source is such a powerful way of counteracting that and thinking about, the value of good pedagogy and good teaching. So these are two photos of Apache Indian children. So the photo on the right is when they arrive at the Carlisle Indian School, and the one on the left is after, I believe it's 4 months at the school. And I think that these images are so powerful because it's now known, there's a huge controversy right now in Canada that you probably read about, that they found, mass graves of children at one of their Indian schools. Thankfully, that there's not, to my knowledge, mass graves at the Indian schools in the US, but they were well known to be rife with emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And the very point of the schools, as the founders of the schools would say, was to destroy Native American culture. It was to make Native American children essentially act white. The famous or infamous quote from the founder of Carlisle Indian School was to kill the Indian and save the man. And so what really grips me about this image is that if you were to show students the image on the left, the after image, there's not really anything that's particularly notable about it if you don't know the context. It's just a group of well-dressed young people. But when you learn what that's a photo of, there's suddenly this whole universe of trauma and pain and separation from your parents and denigration of your culture and abuse that is being captured in this photo. And so the thing that I guess I've reflected on most is primary sources are really important, right? It's something that I really value in my teaching, and it's a lot of what we're doing in this program. But you have to make sure that you're offering context, right? And having your students critically analyze sources in concert with each other and in a larger context so that they can develop sort of mental models and schema for pushing this forward, essentially. So that's a big part of it too. The other part also is thinking about the trauma and the pain that's hidden in that photo on the left. That also makes me think kind of in a larger sense about students themselves, right? And how little, to sort of belabor this metaphor, we often as educators do not get the before photo, right, of our students, that so much of the trauma and pain that our students have is hidden from us, and it's only revealed in little bits and pieces. And so part of this also just makes me reflect on my practice in how do you push forward anti-racist education? How do you talk about really difficult subjects in a way that empowers your students, but doesn't traumatize them, or that's respectful of whatever pain or trauma that they felt in their lives. So this is, like, as you can tell, this images have challenged me tremendously doing this work.
Thanks so much, Dave. And Jennifer, thank you so much for your comment about the primary sources that you couldn't think of a single source that didn't challenge you. I think that would be true for me as well. And then I'm also, Jennifer's second comment about doing the micro-credential. And in the micro-credential, those of you who haven't done it, you also are welcome to join the micro-credential. We gave an option to select the primary source. And it is hard to select one where, just one where you can really unpack what's going on and where you can see injustice and then see solutions that civic action might bring for justice. So thank you so much, Dave. And we want to be able to hear from all the members of the team. And so I'm going to list our, doctoral candidates. Caitlin, who's going to ask each of us about the impact of RISE. And then I really, truly invite any of you to unmute or to put in the comments how RISE has changed you. Caitlin, you take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keel. It's absolutely been an honor working with the RISE program. I know that RISE has absolutely shaped me both as a student and as a teacher, since I'm privileged to be both. So I'll start with Dr. Curry. Dr. Curry, you are a light in every room that you enter. You bring so much joy to every organization that you have ever been with. How has the RISE program changed you?
So RISE made me come to some uncomfortable truths about myself. As I shared with you earlier, I just realized that doing anti-racist and equity work was as much about me learning and changing as it was about helping non-Black educators to learn and change. I realized through the inquiry and self-awareness and reflection that these racist ideas that I have been carrying for white educators who teach Black children made me ignorant, and hateful, and it made it difficult to reach empathy. And I found in my own work that while I was blaming people for not being committed, maybe it was just my lack of guidance, or I blamed it on their stupidity when maybe it was just my lack of clarity. I wanted educators to be transformative, but I probably wasn't providing the support that they needed, or at least proper support. And working with this team has been a healing process for me. It really helped me to take a look at myself and hold up a mirror.
That is amazing. That's incredibly powerful, especially coming from someone with so much wisdom, such as yourself. And Dr. Cinnamon is also saying that you have forever changed PJ 23 as well.
She has really, there's been a transformational shift in my faculty since working with the team from DePaul. I've got teachers who were kind of very happy doing their own thing up in their classroom, doing a brilliant job of teaching children. But Dr. Tina and Dr. Keel and Felicia and Stephanie and the whole team from DePaul, Caitlin, yourself, people have asked some really provocative questions that have been so necessary for us to shift the way we have been doing business to how we should be doing business. And now it's not should we, it's when are we going to and why haven't we? When it comes to asking any questions about equity and children and teaching and learning. And there are days that I have been, Dr. Donna can attest, I have been like a human pinata this whole year with risks that we've taken as a team. And it's okay with me, especially as a Catholic school, it's all about enrollment. If families leave us because they don't like what we're doing and we're doing this work, then I'm sorry to say goodbye to children, because I don't think it's on children. I think sometimes it's on parents. I'm okay bidding adieu to those families if it means continuing this work with fidelity and honesty and integrity. And even on my worst days, I can reach out to anybody on this team and I have felt lifted up. I have felt validated. I have felt safe in the arms of this crew, knowing that even if I misstep, and I do misstep as a white woman all the time, there's always a chance to strengthen, renew, readdress, and redirect. And I'm forever changed. So I'm eternally grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Cinnamon. That was beautiful. I'm going to go who I can see on my Zoom. Ms. Felicity, you bring an enormous amount of, Felicia, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Felicia, you bring an enormous amount of calm to a very turbulent world often. You have an intrinsic ability to bring such a peaceful environment to something that is often racked with a very angry debate. And I think that that's one of the things I've taken away from Rise the most, is that it's not necessarily who's the loudest, but who is the strongest and the most persistent. And I have certainly learned that from you, Felicia. But how has Rise changed to you?
Wow, all of that for me. Rise, when it comes to being calm, yeah, I'll say for the longest time, and even still, I try to slow down my thoughts and I try to see things from multiple angles. But Rise has created a little bit of a fire in me over the course of the last probably 6 months or a year to 6 months. And what it's done for me is it's made me look at myself. It's made me look at how I've been showing up. Although my intentions are always to show up from a place of love and to have an impact that, showers whomever with love. It's forced me to look at how I'm showing up as a Black woman. And when I see something that I don't like, I'm learning to speak up and to speak out more often than I used to. I don't stay silent like I would before. And not that I didn't speak up, but I was one of the nice ones, I'll say, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it like what I'm comfortable. For the longest time, I found myself, and what RISE has done for me is it's let me know that I was one of the safe African American women that so many of um, a lot of my community that that are white, they were comfortable with me. So it's almost as if I was a token. And RISE has slapped me so many times in the face when Dave would show some of the images, and when we start to look at the images, and I couldn't get away from it. And away from RISE, I could be in a grocery store, I could be at a gas station, I could be walking down the street, and there was something that called for me to take action every single time, and it felt really, really uncomfortable. But I had to say something. There were times where I reached out to Dr. K, because I was so angry. And it's RISE is allowing me to allow myself to be angry, that it's okay. So I'm just really appreciative of the opportunity to be able to work with each and every one of you. And I'm so grateful for, and to the participants that showed up and that engaged with us in the chat, and stated how they were feeling, and they were honest and transparent. So I still have a ways to go, but it's moving. So thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. You mentioned the wonderful Dave, who has taught me that my American history knowledge is severely lacking, and that we can't be fully knowledgeable without knowing our history and knowing how we need to fix those wrongs moving forward, and the importance of history in this empathy building and racial equity building. Dave, how has the RISE program changed you?
I would say, sort of like I said before, just learning so much from my fellow facilitators, from the group, the participants, the chat. I think the biggest thing is it's sort of reinforced. Like, there's a quote that's going around a lot now. I think it's from Faulkner, which is that the past is not dead. It's not even really past. And I think that it's easy to study history, especially as a white person, and think that history is something that right? That it's sort of like a series of facts and events that you learn and you understand, and that's kind of that. But that's really not the case, right? That history structures people's lives right now, and the way that people live and interact with each other, and the struggles they face, and the triumphs that they achieve. All of this is affected by history. And so one of the things that this experience has taught me is to really think hard about like the affective side and the empathetic side in teaching, right? That you really can't just expect to hand a bunch of facts to your kids. Like, you can use all the primary sources you want in critical thinking, and that's all great. But if you're not honoring the experiences of your students, if you're not thinking about maybe trauma that they've faced, if you're not making space for that and helping them to move forward, and helping them to take action in the world, right? Prepare them to be citizens, then it really is pointless, right? That just giving them facts and information is not really, that's maybe like not even half of the actual experience of history. That you have to be engaging people's emotions, and you have to be sort of inspiring them however you can to take some sort of action. And I think it's something I kind of knew in the back of my mind before, but seeing it in action in the way, like talking to Tina and Felicia, and hearing stories from our participants, speaking with you and Stephanie and Dr. Keel, just getting all of these experiences from people who have so much expertise and so much empathy and so much conviction in what they do. It really has transformed the way that I think about this, that I really need to be like pushing myself forward and pushing myself farther to try to think about how history is not just stuff that I'm teaching students, but it's what they're living every day, and how can I make that more real and help them to push forward, basically.
It's very powerful. I think it applies to every educator, absolutely. Every classroom out there, definitely. The brilliant Ms. Stephanie Bennett, who is a doctoral student at DePaul University, who has taught me that there is always more to learn as a teacher. There's always new techniques, and that you can do absolutely anything, no matter how difficult the task is, with a beautiful smile on your face the whole time. Ms. Bennett, how has the RISE program changed you?
You know, RISE has left me quite perplexed, but I think in a good way. One of my research interests is to look into holistic education. And so I'm looking at this through the lens of RISE now. And I'm absolutely determined to create a school system where empathy is not just a pillar, but it's like in the ethos of the entire school. And another thing that I think RISE has done for me is it has helped, to echo, you know, Felicia's words, it's really helped me to kind of advocate for myself more. So in situations where I probably would have just sat by quietly and not have spoken up, I've been speaking up more. So that's been pretty cool, a little scary, but also very cool. So if anything, I think RISE has challenged me to see this through, to see the manifestation of this in our education system. So I'm determined to do that.
That's amazing. And I'm sure very, very soon we'll see you in a number of important textbooks for, for all sorts of awesome stuff. Last but never ever least, the absolutely brilliant, amazing, strong leader, my very close friend who I am eternally grateful, who has literally changed the course of my life through her empathy building, but also through her nonstop determination to make this world a better place than the day it was yesterday. Not just for herself, but for every single person that she has ever encountered, ever. The incomparable Dr. Donna Keel. How has the RISE program changed you?
Wow. Well, okay, first of all, that your words just made me cry, but so I'm going to try and keep it together. RISE changed my life in very profound ways. And I think the ways that you can see it is through Felicia and Tina and David and Stephanie and Caitlin and Susan. I can be, as many people know, very work driven and very tireless in just doing things and getting stuff done. What I realized every moment that we worked on RISE is that passion for work was a distraction, and that the real passion of my life is in the relationships. It's in the relationships of knowing Felicia, seeing her pain and bearing witness to it, knowing Tina and seeing her heartache and her joy, and seeing David come alive with this group of women. He was definitely outnumbered, but loved and cherished. And then also seeing Stephanie grow so completely, and working with Susan, who often stays behind the scenes, but is always that voice of integrity. And then working with you, Caitlin, that's changed me. It's changed me around the concept of racial justice. You know, that it's not just a construct, but it is a humanity-driven force that we must embrace, and we must live one person at a time continually. So it's shifted me. You know, it's no longer the to-do list, it's the who can I touch list in a good way. It's no longer, you know, the checklist of things that I have to get done in order to, you know, move OIPL forward or do anything else, but rather, how can I bring inspiration and meaning to someone's life to show them that they matter, that everyone matters? So it's changed me in a significant way. And so I'm grateful to every person on the team and every person who comes to these sessions, because you've taken time out of your lives to say that racial justice matters to you. And that's how it starts. That's how we'll change this country. That's how we'll take this country and make it just, is by giving it time, by listening, learning, and leaning toward people rather than away. So even, Dr. Molly knows this, even when there's been some significant resistance and I have been wanting to push back, you lean in and you come closer. So come closer. So it's about relationships. So it's changed me significantly. Thank you, Caitlin, for leading that part. And I want to, there's this silent person in our team who does all the work for the micro-credential. But Susan, anything you want to say to close us out before we get to the next question?
I would just say that it's been a real privilege and an honor for me to get to know the people on this team. And I look forward to these meetings and even the prep sessions that are sometimes a little arduous, and working through how many slides do we have this time and how long are our sessions going to be, but looking way beyond that. And I've been very introspective around the content and doing my own work behind the scenes of racial justice and equity. And so being part of this team has really impacted me and opened my eyes, and starting a journey that will now be for the rest of my life. So I really appreciate being part of the team.
And before we move to, Stephanie's going to ask our next question, actually, of all of you. If there's anything anyone would like to add or any comments that you have, we're really open to hearing your responses to anything that we've said, or any responses to how RISE may have impacted you. And even if it's something that you want to share with us that might be, a critique or something that we could have done better. So I'll just leave that out there, pause for a moment, give wait time like a good teacher. And if not, I'm going to throw it to Stephanie Bennett, who's going to guide us in our next question.
Okay, so our next question is, and it's an important one, what are your dreams for the future of equity using primary sources?
So we really intended this question, as Stephanie kind of posed it. It's up to you. What do you need? Are there any things that you dream of? I think us as a team, we have a vision of taking this work and bringing it to schools, directly to the source, to students, to hear their voice, to teachers within the context of the classroom. These sessions were incredibly powerful and certainly set the stage for all the work that needs to be done. But we also know that the real transformational effect is when students can take concepts driven out of primary sources and create action in our world, and that action through their projects, through their voices, through what they want to change in their schools. So I think as a team, we're hoping we can continue that equity work in some real significant ways with students, but we'd really love to know from you of what kind of future work do you see? What would help you in your schools or in your organizations?
Dr. Donna?
Yes.
It's Molly. One of the things that I'm still stuck on, and I might be stuck on it for a really long time, and I'm okay being stuck because that's where the learning happens. But when I brought DePaul to my middle schoolers, and you and I and Stephanie and Dr. Tina and Felicia, we talked about bringing this work to our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for those 3 sessions that were 30 minutes each. And I thought to myself, in my naivete as a principal, I'm bringing this amazing academic team from DePaul University to my students. But my parents, their response was, why aren't you doing it so that DePaul is working with the teachers and the teachers are then bringing it to the kids? For some reason, that was what they wanted or they envisioned. I need to understand why. Are they just so fearful? I chalk everything up to fear and ignorance. But are they just so fearful that hearing from someone that's not their child's trusted teacher, for lack of a better, vernacular? What do you think that was about? Why is there this need for it's got to come from the classroom teacher? Why aren't experts? I wanted experts. As a white woman, I wanted strong Black women, who's your team, to come and talk to my kids. Why do you think that was tricky for them? Like what?
I'd love to hear other people's view as well, but I think you named it in your last sentence. There are people of color on the team presenting
Right.
their children. And when you look at the complexity of the social construct of racism, it's all around the fear of the unknown.
Right.
And you almost are putting that same construct on what was happening. It's we're highlighting that whole social construct of I don't know you.
Right.
You're of a different color.
Right.
You're with my children, and there's this historic legacy of that being fearful.
I guess that's where I want my change to be then, as you ask about what I need or what people need in the schools, is I want to shift the thinking then so that parents and stakeholders can see that as a white woman, I am leaning on experts. I am leaning on people who have a deep understanding of this that I do not have, and bringing that to my stakeholders, because to me, that's more authentic. To me, that's real. And that's, I don't know, that's something that I think about as we shift as schools and as teachers and administrators and team leaders. We need to think about, like, how can we bring this, to a school in a way that they realize not what's going on, who are these people, more like, oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have this team here of experts. And, just something for thinking, I guess.
It is. And it's something definitely, I think, when you think about the dream, which is, you're right on top of it, the dream would be that we could embrace those who have other opinions and not opinions, other facts.
Right.
Because easily resources are dismissed. We can all bring in all kinds of, and I've heard that from a lot of our partner schools where, teachers will use resources in the resource is dismissed because it's not one that they, that a parent found themselves or someone else found.
Well, and Tina just highlighted how it has to be somebody who students trust and can learn from. I love that.
Yeah, very, very true.
Yeah. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anyone else on the call, on the Zoom, have any dreams or any needs within your schools or anything that you'd like to see? And that might be a question that you need to ponder. And we're going to also give you that opportunity to share anything that you would like with us. We're sending you, I think Caitlin put it in the link already, a survey for you to fill out so that you can kind of ponder those questions and then give us some feedback. And I think Tina has our next question, which is an important one. It's something that Tina reminds us of almost every RISE session with Felicia. So, Tina.
So the question is, what's your personal RISE call to action? And Dr. Keel, is this question open to everyone?
Everybody. I guess what we want to know is what are you going to do from here? We're really curious to know. You took time today and probably other days to come to these sessions out of your very busy lives. And during COVID, that's like a huge commitment. We would love to know, what is it that you're planning to do to continue the work that you have for racial justice? What is it that you want to commit, that you're doing this summer or that you're going to do next year? We'd love to be able to see how things will grow and to see if there are new ideas that can help us as well.
I can share something.
Please do, Sandra.
I've only been to one other RISE, and I got a lot of good ideas. And I was looking for some type of a certification in like diversity and these types of issues. And I couldn't find it at DePaul, but I found this. So this was really good. But I am taking a diversity and equity certification through Cornell online. And I was wondering if that might be something that you can offer at DePaul as well. Maybe you already do. I couldn't find it. But I'm, you know, for people who already have advanced degrees like myself, and I don't need another degree. I just want to be more educated. I do my own reading, but you know, be part of a group. So I would maybe make that suggestion.
Yeah, Sandra, thank you so much, because it's definitely something that is significant, I think, to a lot of folks. We currently, for the RISE, there is a micro-credential online that will give you a digital badge in this racial equity using primary sources. So you're absolutely welcome to join in that at any time. It's fully online, asynchronous. I think is, you know, what you're mentioning too is taking the concepts that we're learning here and making them even more concrete so that you could get a certification. And that's a great suggestion for us. I think it would be great to be able to, you know, kind of certify educators who do have, you know, already graduate degrees or even not, in the ability to use primary sources as a key for racial justice. So I love that suggestion. Certainly something that we can ponder and figure out, you know, how to quickly pull something together because we have the content. So thank you so much for that. And Jennifer, thank you for your comment to look at the primary sources and to seek out others to invoke empathy in me and spur to action. I think that, you know, the thing I worried about as time went on during the pandemic is that we would lose momentum. That after George Floyd and as we were going through getting back to the kind of busy lives that we had pre-COVID, that we would lose our focus. And so my hope and my personal call to action is to not lose focus. This work has changed my life and I intend never to let it go. It's that I think it's the thing that when you look forward to planning sessions, like I would with this team, unlike most other planning sessions, you know that something's changing in you. And when you develop such deep relationships and can feel that passion to continue to grow, I just hope that we don't lose momentum, that, you know, post-COVID life, when everything's, you know, back to busy, I keep hearing back to busy, which sounds terrible to me, that we remember what happened when we paused and George Floyd was murdered in front of our eyes, that we remember what happened to Breonna Taylor, that we remember all of those deaths as calls to action. And I think the only way to do that is if we keep it alive and we keep looking historically and looking at what has happened in this country and how we can ensure that there's a call to civic action to continue justice in our country. And Dave, thank you for that. You're hoping to get your students more engaged in action of any kind. I think that's so significant. And I know in my own classes, it's I'm realizing more and more, it's not just about doing research, it's about actually going out and having the research have impact.
I really was, I was really taken with I think it was Tina who posted up thread, a story about Frederick Douglass speaking with Lincoln about his conclusion was like, you need to do something. And Lincoln said, what? And he basically said, you have to do something, right? That you have to push forward, that you can't just sit here and wait for, you know, and think about this and talk about it. You have to do something. And as someone who teaches history, I'm not entirely sure how to integrate like action in that, because it's not generally something that history teachers do at the college level. But one of the things this has taught me is that it probably should be. Yeah. And so I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like, but I think that my call to action is similar to what the story that Tina said before, is that I just need to do something, that there has to be some sort of action component to what I'm teaching, and, you know, pushing people to do something and doing something myself and making this a little more action oriented rather than just look at these sources. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Bye.
I
And
wholeheartedly
for
agree.
people, and for people who may feel like you're powerless, like I used to tell my students, like, or when I talked about them, I would say to my colleagues, I want to empower them. And I stopped saying that because my students already have power. They just need me to allow them to use it. And so don't feel like you're powerless, you can't do anything. Yes, you can. Don't ever say, well, I don't have any power. You know, I'm not in a position of authority. And remember, when you have to ask other people to change the way things are, they benefit from the way things are. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to ask them. Just go for it. Like Douglas said to Lincoln, I don't know. I just know you have to engage. And I don't have all the answers. I just know you have to do something. You got to start somewhere and just keep going. Stay the course. Don't stop.
Beautiful. And thank you, Felicia. You'll be using your personal and professional action to bring more awareness, especially in the criminal justice system, which is, I know you spend a lot of years there. So thank you. And thank you, Lauren Daly, for the link to Jess Lifshitz, 5th grade teacher blog. That she's done some great work around racial equity in Illinois. We want to know who she is. So that's great. Thank you so much, everybody. If you see Lauren's post in the chat, she's got a link to her blog. So I think we're actually coming up on 6 o'clock, and I want to be very mindful of your time. We had another question that says what week, and Felicia was going to ask this, so we'll just throw this out there.
Yeah. So what's next? And how can we make equity a reality using the primary sources? How do any of you, what are your intentions on using them? Will you be using them? And what are some of your thoughts, if you'd like to share?
You know, and two, what's next is what would you like to see from us? What would you, I know, Jennifer, thank you so much for Sandra, actually, thank you so much for the suggestion about the certification. But if there are other things that DePaul can do for you or for your school, we'd love to hear about them, or any one of us would also be glad to get feedback individually. But if there are suggestions that you have for us, please do put those in the chat, or feel free to email any of us. I think now that you have, if you got this link, then you have our emails. So we're very happy to take those suggestions. And, as we began, I want to really pause and sincerely thank Sheila Smith. I know that Tina thanks Sheila, and all the rest of our team thanks Sheila. But truly, we couldn't do this work at all if not for Sheila Smith and the Bear Education Foundation. It was back in June of 2020. And I think I sent a very simple email to Sheila. It says, we have to do something. And Sheila immediately said, whatever you can create, we will support. And that was pre any acronym for RISE or anything that we had envisioned. And since that time, Sheila has been not only a model of racial justice and equity, she has a fascinating story of marching in Selma and really being at the front lines, but she has been our biggest supporter. So thank you so much, Sheila, and thank you again to all of the team, to Susan and Felicia and Tina and Caitlin and Stephanie and David. Thank you so much to everyone. So thanks, folks.
And my thank you to all of you. I think it's been terrific. And Donna, we're going to talk about how we can expand this and continue it. It's so needed. And you all have been terrific. So thanks. I've learned while I've listened. So thank you.